Alright, welcome everybody to another Wizards Lizard 2 game development live stream. I'm Jeff from Lost Decade Games, and I want to show off a little bit of the new stuff I'm working on this week. First of all, spent a lot of time on the lighting. Actually, started using a new package recently called Light 2D, which I will bring up here in the asset store real quick, just so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Light 2D. Anyways, this is a really interesting lighting package for 2D. And it kind of works the same way fundamentally that the lights in a Wizards Lizard 1 worked, which was our HTML5 game. But the basic gist of it is that it uses kind of gradients, colored gradients to put lights down. But the thing it does that our lighting system didn't do was that it can create dynamic shadows based on light obstacles. So you can see here in some of the screenshots that it can create shadows based on these things. Anyways, it's a pretty cool system. It's actually $50, so it's a little on the pricier side in terms of these packages, but I am a big fan of it so far. Just to give you an idea what it looks like, we can go and check that out. Let's go into full screen, maximize it. And it might be a little difficult to tell the difference between the old lighting system and the new lighting system, but a couple things. One is it gives me more of the lighting visuals that I wanted, which was kind of hard to, at least hard for me to get right with Unity's built-in point lights. And so you can see that the lights are actually a little bit more vibrant, especially like on things like the fireballs. It's a lot more easy for me to control the intensity and the shape of the lights with this kind of a system, which is kind of nice. The other thing is, like I mentioned before, these dynamic shadows. You can see as I'm walking around here how these objects are kind of casting dynamic shadows as the light kind of moves around the room. So right now Raga is lit, and so there's a light source coming from him. So whenever he moves around, you can see stuff, shadows and stuff. But also these fireballs will create those shadows in the background too. The other thing you might notice too is I have the statistics window open where we can see the frame rate and stuff, and much more performant than the old method using those built-in Unity lights. And there may be a way to make the Unity lights more performant. I'm sure there is, because a lot of people wouldn't be using them if there weren't. But especially for my purposes, this seems to work a lot better. And so you can see that these little gates are also light obstacles. So it's one of the things we've been working on, and I'm pretty happy with the results so far. The kind of gist of it, though, is that it uses sprites to kind of achieve this effect. So this is what the default light would look like. Let's see. Oh, I want to open PSD files. Let's not do that. But you can see this light here. It's really just like a radial gradient. And this is pretty much how we did lights in the Wizards Lizard 1 as well. We would use this kind of a radial gradient, and then you can change this color from white to whatever you want your light color to be. And then we would overlay that on the canvas using some kind of blending operation. That's how we achieve those light effects. And so that works out pretty well. It also has a bunch of shaders built in and stuff that I don't really know much about. Other than that, it uses kind of a second camera here. When you add it to your scene, it has what's called a lighting camera here. And it basically only renders a certain number of things, and I think it uses special shaders to make that happen. So it's pretty interesting. And then it adds some components to your normal camera. I won't pretend to understand exactly how it works altogether, but I like the effect, so that's pretty cool. It allows me to do nicer things too, like I added my own lighting mask here. With this one's called Diamond Light, for lack of a better term on it, because it's just a diamond gradient that I created in in, what do you call it, paint.net. Hey, Josen, thanks for joining. The name of the asset is Light2D. Some pictures from trip I took yesterday. It is, yeah, it's called Light2D. I just searched for it, had it up, but I guess it resets. Anyways, it's a GPU lighting system. It's $50 in the asset store. It's pretty good. You can take a look at the screenshots and see kind of what it does. But the gist of it is that it has colored lights in 2D space that also can cast shadows. And so the way that it casts shadows is by basically drawing polygons in the space where lights aren't reaching, I guess. Anyways, it's a pretty nice little system. There are other systems that do 2D lights as well that I investigated. One of them was, what was it called? I think it was called 2DDL, 2D Dynamic Lights. Yeah, this one. This one is okay too. It kind of has some similar looking effects where you can have kind of 2D geometry and then it will cast the shadows for you. But this one actually works with colliders, which may be good for what you're doing. But it actually wouldn't be bad for what I'm doing either. But the Light2D package actually works solely on sprites, and so you can have the shadows cast by the sprite image itself, and so it'll kind of reflect the shape of the sprite as well. So it's actually a pretty cool thing, and I really like the way that it looks. And again, it's way more performant than what I had working in the Unity lighting system. So that's good stuff. Something else, so you see like this ball here, it's got like a very, nicely, nice shadow that's kind of the shape of the ball exactly. Another thing I've been working on is a little bit of dungeon generation stuff with regards to puzzles and stuff. Yeah, thanks for joining, Salmon Moose. The contrast of the lights is much more satisfying. It's a little bit less washed out, I think, and it's a little better. It's a little easier to get some like higher intensity looking lights in this 2D environment. I think it's because they're all sprites. When you start getting into the world of mixing the Unity point lights with sprites, it doesn't look quite right. Perhaps if I had, normal mapping on everything and that kind of stuff, it would look a little better, but I don't. Again, a lot of it kind of comes from my, relative noviceness with the Unity's lighting system. Anyways, another thing I'm working on is like this pushable block. So before I was using Unity's like built-in physics system to just push stuff around, and that had some decent effects. But I wanted to try this other effect too, which is being able to move this block around, kind of like more Zelda style. And so I set up some puzzles where you can push this thing onto a button, and then it will open up a series of doorways. And so, for example, I guess it's not this way. Gotta find out where that particular door happens to be. Here it is. This is where it was, but now it's down, and I can move past it. And then basically the dungeon is separated into sections that are all gated by a certain colored wall or set of walls. And then you have to find the trigger button for each wall and hit it, and then you'll be able to pass through that gate. And so I've made the levels quite a bit larger to accommodate my testing. So like there's the orange button, although it's kind of spawned in the same place as this, the statue spawned in the same place as this guy. So that's really not what we want. But luckily I can get it out of there. Also, for this push block thing, I need to make it so that you can push it consistently instead of having to wait every time. But let's see. I guess, is it possible to get back to the scene? Oh, here we go. I guess so. So this is what we're looking at. Oops. Huh, interesting. You can see the lights flickering in and out. So like the way that I'm flickering the lights now is by increasing the scale. And so you can see all these candles got this yellow light, and they kind of just pulse like they're flickering candles. And really all that is I'm just scaling the sprite. Salmon Moose says, love catching a stream on a Tuesday morning. It's made me feel guilty enough to kick off my next major project. Nice. Well, I'm glad that I can be a driver of guilt. And motivating in that sense. Anyways, the light's pretty cool. I wonder if, yeah, I wonder if this takes into account all these things being rendered off screen. Anyways, so this is all looking pretty good. You can kind of see though, let's see. What I'd like to do though is I'm going to go back to the non-maximized version because I want to show you kind of the layout here. Because I want to run around and find all the stuff on the stream. But you can kind of see that like I start here in this room and I could go up and there's a wall right here. You can see that right there. There's a blocks, and then basically I can go into these 3 rooms right here that are attached, and then there's the button and the statue you can push over there, and you know you can't really leave this area until you've hit the button and gone through the wall. And then this other area is then gated by this orange wall, which you can see right here at the top of the screen, and the button for that would be down here. And so you can kind of explore this entire area up in here without actually hitting the button and going through the wall, but you can't go through to the next area, which is now over here. And then the blue area is kind of behind this wall, and so you'd have to go up into this one, hit the blue button right here in this room, come back down, and then this would be the level exit right here. Salmon Moose says a Perlin noise function will give a nice flicker. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. The way I'm doing it right now is just a very simple tween, where it scales up to like 110% or whatever the base scaling is, and then back down. And just like 200 milliseconds or something. Pretty simple, effective, but I should try out the Perlin noise. That sounds pretty interesting too. Might make it a little more candly, a little more flickery instead of kind of pulsy, which would be really interesting. Something else that I really liked about this lighting system was that I was able to create a kind of more localized lighting system for certain monsters and stuff. And so one thing I was able to do was, let's see, have this stove that Matt drew. And I was able to light this guy as if he has lights coming from his eyes and his mouth, which was actually really tricky. I tried to do it with using Unity lights, but I couldn't get the effect that I wanted because what's nice about this Light 2D plugin is that you can kind of create any kind of mask that you want. So you could create like a little rectangular white rectangle with just a little bit of gradient on the sides, and it might work really well for like a glowing screen of like a computer or like a very intense hole from which light is coming from. So anyways, that stuff's all pretty cool, and I'm pretty happy with how that stuff is going. Let's see. So today I need to catch up with a little bit of stuff that Matt has been working on. So he's been cranking out images, and so I need to start using some of those things. I think this is a new explosion that he made too. I actually haven't looked at this. Oh wow, that looks really good. This is a brand new thing. Oh, it's cool. Wow, that's a lot better than our old explosions in AW01. Now I want to work on that. Let's do it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our testing scene. We're going to get rid of this guy now. I was also working on polishing some of these buttons. You can kind of see this. Well, maybe I should turn off the lighting camera for now. Well, if that, I think that'll just make it black. No, actually, doesn't do anything at all. Okay, good, good. Anyways, I've been working on the polishing of these walls, so you can kind of see that there's a little bit of tweening going on when they go up and down, so that kind of looks a lot better. It's a little bit harder to see. Same thing with the buttons. There's a little bit of tween when they change from one sprite to the other, and so it kind of gives it a little bit of bounce, which makes it look a little more juicy. Anyway, so I'm gonna get rid of those for now, and let's play with this explosion. I guess I'm gonna misc. And so we'll just create an empty prefab. Explosion. And let's see if I can remember. It's been a while since I created a sprite-based animation. And by a while, I mean like a week or two. So let's see. It looks like these things are in a grid. So let's do that. 100. Nope. Bigger than that. 200, maybe. 160. Maybe if Matt is in chat, he can tell me what the sizes of these cells are. 180. It's getting closer. Maybe it is 200. 192. Okay, all right. I was getting there. Nice. Okay. So we can apply that. And so now we've got these nice sprite animations here. And we can just select all these guys. And we can drag it up onto this guy. And it'll automatically create an animator component that's got that state, the explosion state. Well, I don't know why it's called explosion underscore. It's kind of weird. Let's rename those. Maybe because there was already something in here called explosion. In any event, though, I want to move these to the animations folder anyway. Oh, I can't because there's already one called explosion. Well, we can just get rid of that because we're gonna get rid of that old janky explosion anyway. So we'll move the new one in there to animations. There we go. Explosion. This animator windows are always such a mess. Okay, so where were we? Where's the explosion? Okay, I guess it's out here somewhere. I don't know why. Let's put it back on 0, 0. Or maybe put it like 4. And then we'll give it a sprite here so we can see. We'll give it the first frame. There we go. I don't know if you guys can hear my cat Toes. He wants something. I don't know what he wants. Maybe he wants dinner. He's gonna have to wait though. Anyways, now we can go into the animation window. Hopefully. I thought I already had a clip though. I feel like it should already have a default clip because there we go. So let's see, can we play that? Boom. Boom. Nice. That's pretty cool. Kind Cat is making Skype impersonations. Yeah, it's like someone's on the phone. It's the cat doorbell. Cat ringtone, maybe. And Matt says he sounds like a pterodactyl. I'm sure he appreciates that. I can actually reduce the number of samples. Right? Or no, I want to increase them, sorry. 24 frames a second. I like to make sound effects, while I'm making these sprites. Anyways, that's pretty cool. So what we can do is, I think we had an old prefab somewhere in here. The misc, yeah. So really it just has, I don't worry about the sound for now. It had an explosion script, so we'll probably just need to convert that over, or take it over. Yeah, the sound was the old way I was doing stuff, so we're going to remove that for now. And let's see, remove duration, destroy game object. I think the thing we can do with this, though, is 0.5. This is more like 0.2 at the moment. I think what I'd like to do with this, though, is use the Unity animation events, maybe, so I can say when it, basically two things, like when it becomes not hazardous anymore, and also when it's completely gone. I don't know if that's the right way to go about that, but it's one way we could do it. So like we could put an animation event here. No function selected. I actually haven't used these yet, so I don't know exactly how they work quite yet. Sam Moose says animation events are amazing. Yeah, they seem like they are. I am not exactly certain though how to tap into them yet, because like I said, I haven't actually done it. So we'll say Unity animation events, and we'll take a quick look. Oh, I can call the functions directly. Oh, that's interesting. So I don't actually have to like listen to them. I can just create a function. And so I guess as the function, if a function just exists on here, so I could say like on this explosion thing, I could say like public void on explosion end, maybe, and then destroy. Let's see, and then maybe I can get rid of this too. So if I go in here, let's see, so this explosion, we'll add explosion, and then we'll see, name sound does not exist in the current context. Oops. Yes, let's get rid of that then. So, okay, anyways, so if we go over here to our animation window and we edit this animation event, there we go, on explosion end. Awesome. Yeah. Looks like you're right, Josen. Just needs to be a public function on the attached to the same thing with the animator. I might make another one here at some point too, where we have a collider. I'll probably have a collider here that represents where you're taking damage, and then I'm gonna keep that collider around. Oops, keep that collider around until maybe one of these frames where it feels like the explosion shouldn't be hurting you anymore, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's just see if this explosion end thing will actually work. And it will destroy itself. Sort of. So we get the opportunity to test out the lights too for the explosion. Let's put that guy right here next to Raga. So it happens pretty fast, but we can see that that's actually working. So let's put a light on it. Now we're going to use our light 2D light source. Put it under there, and make sure that we've got it kind of zeroed out. This would be a good intro to how this stuff works too, if you care about this particular thing. But the thing I like a lot about this is that the way you can change the size of this light is just by setting the scale. So I could scale this light sprite up. And so you can see that this is actually just a sprite. Hey. Everyone say hi to Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
You can see this is using the default light sprite, and so we could go in here and we could choose the diamond one, but we'll keep the current one for now. And there's some other properties here that we're going to mess with in a second. But the sizing is kind of what controls how big it's going to look. So we can make that 5x, and it would be a big light, which we probably want for an explosion. We also kind of want to change the color, so we're going to use our palette here. We're going to make it orange. And you can kind of see that light in the inspector here. It's a little hard to see in this context just because it's this very faint orange thing. It'll be a little easier when it's actually here. The other thing we can do actually for now is we will go into this event and we will not destroy it. You can change the intensity through the color. So that's the... Uh-oh. Oh no. I seem to have crashed Unity. Let's open it up again. Hey, Seaberry Monk says, my first time catching the stream. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Alright, so we're going to go back to our testing scene. And what do we do here? Okay, we're not going to destroy it on explosion end, but we're just going to... So now we can kind of see how it looks. The other thing we can do here actually is I'm going to create an ambient light. The ambient lights with Light 2D are a little weird to create, but they actually work pretty well. You just create a sprite, and you get, no, not material. You make the sprite just really white because you can color it. And so in this case, I'm going to make it kind of a the white that we use in our palette here, which is kind of more of a greenish white. And then I'm going to scale this guy up to like, I don't know, say 40 by 20 for now, just so it fills the screen. And then we're going to keep it at 0, 0. We're going to call this ambient light. And then we put it on the ambient light layer. And then the Light 2D system knows what to do with it. It kind of creates this. So now the whole scene is more lit with an ambient light, but that's way too strong. And so the way that we control the intensity is by the alpha channel of this color. And so if we want it to be, something a little more subtle, it's going to be like the lower end of the spectrum. And so you can see now there's a little bit of ambient lighting in the world. but we can obviously change that to make it a little more intense if we want. So now it's, this whole scene is a little bit more lit than it used to be. Oh, and Seaberry Monk is a podcast listener, so thank you very much. It's always nice to have podcast listeners stop in. Anyway, so this is actually looking kind of cool. Before, I'm going to put this up here, though. I guess it didn't save my light changes because I added a light source onto this guy using Light 2D, but we crashed, so I don't think it actually took. So let's make sure to save it. And then, like I said before, we can go in here and we can change the size of this lighting sprite to be pretty big, so that kind of what you would think of as an explosion, hopefully. And we can change the color again, so we're going to use this orange, and we can control the intensity through this alpha channel on the color. Because really what we're doing here with these lights is we're just laying down a like essentially a radial gradient, but it could be really any kind of gradient. So for example, if I were to change the sprite here to this other gradient I created called the diamond light, it's a much different looking light source. And so you can see from this, in this perspective, it kind of looks a little bit weird. One, because this background is just a blue background, and so it kind of looks funny. But you can really create any shape of light that you want for these guys. And so I think the default light that comes with this is sort of what we want, but again, maybe something bigger to kind of give it more oomph. Oops. And then if we were to see this in the game, it would actually look a lot better. Hey, Nilo FV, thanks. Says the game is looking awesome. Did you develop the lighting system yourself, or is it third party? It is third party. It's a lighting system called Light 2D. It's on the Unity asset store. You can check it out. But basically what it does is just sprite-based lighting. And I put that in air quotes because it really just overlays radial gradients, or really any gradient that you want over your sprites to create lighting effects. So we're going to go back here and change that to default light. And let's see, we'll keep it, let's make it like 10 by 10. And let's see, so we got that. And we've got our explosion, which looks pretty good. And I kind of want to see what it looks like in the game itself, so I'm going to go into my room populator here instead of putting the sports ball, or rather just copy it, and then I'll comment it out. And then I'll put the misc explosion in here instead. And that also means that we need to go back into our prefabs, misc. Let's just get rid of this guy. I think that we don't really need anything particular on here. And it's just got the, we can always add the hazard stuff back in. And then we'll just drag this guy here. And now we've got our explosion. And I think we want this to be on the tall objects sorting layer. And then we'll have to add our depth sorting component in here too. And then because I have OCD, I like to move that up to be right below the sprite renderer because they're kind of related. And then let's go back into our main scene, which is, the core of our game here. And this is what our explosion would look like in an actual level. And it's got the proper sorting and everything. And now we just needed to do damage. And, we already hooked up that animation event, and so that's pretty cool. So we can have it not loop forever. But I do like the way that looks. So let's see. One thing maybe I will do real quick is also just kill the lights on some other stuff so I can kind of see the lights of that in isolation. And so the way I'm going to do that is have this XML file for the kitchen, and which is the level we're working on right now. And right now I just have these lights being put in, the candles. Oh, can you guys hear the music? I actually have the speakers turned down. I didn't realize that you guys are hearing the audio. But yeah, this is some preview music that is going to go. It's maybe not the final cuts, but it is new music that's that will eventually be the music for AWL 2. Salmon Moose says the gradient would probably look better at the base of the explosion. That is absolutely true. So that's one thing I wanted to do is go in here and be able to kind of mess with the lighting of this particular thing so I can kind of see it in isolation. I'm also going to remove or just disable the light on the player for now. There we go. So you can kind of see that puts a little orangish glow on the player too, which is nice when he's close to the explosion. I think a couple things here though is that one, we want the light to be a little bit bigger. Actually, maybe I'll just test that out at runtime. So we're going to go in here and we have the Game Object Manager, and so we will just find, hopefully, the explosion. Maybe there's a better way. Oh, I can search. Great. Explosion clone, okay. Why can't I expand? Okay, there we go. If I get back out of the search, then I can do it. So the light here, so here's where we can mess with the light itself. So we can change the anchor point of the light to be up or down, relative to the sprite itself. So we can put it more like kind of like right here-ish. 0.6, 0.5. Looks about right. The other thing we could do is change where the actual sprite is anchored. But I think that this is actually fine. By default, it's just going to anchor in the center of the sprite, and because these frames were all created, with a specific kind of animation in mind, it's actually a lot harder if we start messing with the anchor points to get them to line up correctly. So I'm just going to leave that alone, basically. So we have that, and then we can also mess with like the size of the explosion. So we can kind of make it more oval too, because this thing is kind of an oval, so we can stretch it out. And so you can kind of see that now the lighting for the explosion is a little bit more of an oval. It's a little closer to what you would think of as the shape of this thing, which looks kind of cool. Also, I bet what we could do is, we could animate the alpha channel of the light to be, more intense or less intense over the course of this thing. So let's do that. So back in here, we got this light. We want to change this to be, what was it, negative 0.5, just to bring it down a little bit. And in our animation, I guess let's go back to our other scene. Oops. Back here, let's revert. Oh, I didn't keep my scaling changes. So we had the light here, and it was 10. I want to scale it to like 20. And so the scaling of the light is, very dependent on the shape of the light you're using too. So if we're using a different, you can see how this light has, most of its intensity in the middle, like in the very direct center. You kind of need to scale it pretty big in order to get that in view. But we could create a different gradient that maybe had like less of a transition between the white and the black or something. Really, you could kind of do whatever you want with regards to that. But anyways, let's see. We got that. Let's go back into our animation window here. And I think what we can do is if we go into record mode and we go to this last keyframe over here, and we go to the light itself, we can actually take this alpha channel down to 0. And so what will happen there is that the light will get progressively lighter. Yeah, nice. And then we can just apply that. Go back to the main scene. There we go. So I kind of get like that flashing effect. I think with this particular light, though, I still want the... Uh-oh. The cat is knocking over my green screen. I think it's good now. Cats, they demand justice. Anyways, so let me change the scaling of this light a little bit more. Let's change it to like 30 and 15, just to make it a little bigger. And we'll see what that looks like. Oh man, the cats just hate me today. I wonder what that looks like on the stream. I'll have to watch it later and see. So the light's a little bigger now, which is kind of nice. And then the next step is to hook it up to one of our explosive objects, which I think should be pretty easy. I think we just have explosive. And what it does, oh, come on, cats. It's kind of funny because the green screen is right next to the cat tree, so they just get up there and they'll push it over because they hate me. And so, let's see. So this spawns the misc explosion object, which is what we want. And that all looks good. So what we'll do is we'll go back and I think we have this explosive barrel thing. Let's see where that's at. I think it's in props, explosive crate. So we'll change that in our starting area to be explosive crate. Oh, I turned off all the lights. That's okay, we can still kind of see. And then I need the sports ball back actually, so that I can hit it with something, so it can explode. So let's move this over. Make that like 6. We'll go in here. We'll pick that up with the tongue, or we won't. I'll miss it. There we go. Boom. Very nice. I feel like though maybe I'll want to center that explosion a little differently. Oops. On the explosive crate itself, because it looks like it's a little too low. Let's see, but that's okay. The next thing we can do is we can go back into our explosion and re-enable the destruction of this game object after the animation completes. And then we'll grab this thing and we'll spit it. Boom. There it goes. Pretty cool. I like the way that's looking. So let's go in and we'll go back to our test scene real quick. And we'll look at adding a collider to it so that it can actually take damage and stuff. So let's move, whoops. not in the right view. There we go. We'll move Rog up there for a second. And we're dealing with this guy, and so we'll just add a circle collider, I guess. This could be a polygon collider, actually, but you know, this is probably fine for now. And then let's see, explosion. There we go. So that's kind of our explosive area where the player would be taking damage. Another thing we can do is we can shrink that over the course of the animation too. So what we can do is, right about here, what we can do is we can take this thing and just kind of scale it all the way down like that. And so when we play it now, the radius of the explosion changes. We can also throw an event here to make it become completely non-hazardous in a moment. Or not in a moment, but at a certain frame. So that you kind of walk through the smoke of a smoldering explosion. But first, let's test this out with regards to taking damage. So we'll add the hazard component, which just has damage of 1. And I think I simplified the hazard stuff a while ago, where it just either on a trigger or on a collision. And so this will actually be a trigger. So we need to set is trigger because we don't want the player's rigid body to collide with it and get knocked. We don't want him to collide with it as if it were solid, basically. And so what we can do is we can go back in here, and let's go back to our explosion, and we'll just comment out this guy. Yeah, Seaberry Monk says tools that Unity gives you to do that are pretty cool. It is pretty cool. It's very, very handy when it comes to things like, changing the hitbox of something to be in sync with the animations and stuff like that. Or the lights, like we were able to really just very easily sync up the lighting with the animation. So that's pretty cool. So where were we? Oh, right. This needs to be. We need to put some layers on this. I think I removed some of my layers, but I'll probably add another one back in. We'll call this like global hazard. And this would be something that we would want to have affect pretty much anything in the game. So we'll just call it a global hazard for now. But we would want the explosion to damage enemies. We'd want it to damage really anything else in the world. So we're going to give it that layer. So we're going to go in here and say global hazard. And we don't really care about the light. Actually, the light needs to stay on the light sources layer in order for it to act correctly with the lighting system, Light 2D. So we don't want to cascade that down to all the children. But there we go. So still not triggering the damage. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I haven't gone into my physics settings. So physics 2D, and we have this great matrix, and we want global hazards to affect the player. So global hazard. Let's see. We probably don't want light obstacles. We can probably turn off collision for all of these. light layers. So I just added these light layers as part of the light 2D stuff. And there's really no reason for the lights to collide with anything, I think. So let's just uncheck all those guys. Ambient light, light sources, light obstacles. They don't need to collide with anything. So global hazard, we do want to collide with the player, which is going to be player and global hazard, so right there. Right now, we'd mostly just want the player to collide with a lot of stuff, like triggers for the player, warp zones, projectiles, gizmos, pits, walls, anything that we marked as solid. The player tongue collides with projectiles, gizmos, solid things, walls. Solids collide with projectiles themselves, etc., etc. And yeah. So now we should actually be able to take damage. There he goes. And you can see Matt's brand new pain frame. Bam! He gets all deformed. Looks kind of cool. Trix610, thanks for joining. Glad you're enjoying the podcast. And thanks for joining the live stream. Bam. Although we are getting some kind of an error here. Oh, the screen shake doesn't work. Right. I think it's because I changed the way that the screen shake stuff works. And actually what we need to do is create a stage here. I think is what we called it. And I put the game object manager inside of it. There we go. And that way you can shake everything. So the game object manager actually doesn't seem to be working, but we'll see why that is in a moment. Because that also needs to happen on the. So let's apply the changes here. I wonder if we can mark this as static. Because it's not going to go anywhere. Help optimize. Won't make him a lot of difference at the moment, but you know, whatever. Let's go back into our main room. Fry Origin says, why don't you use Golder Innomine? It's kind of epic income for public people. I don't know what that is. I haven't heard of it before, but we'll check it out. I think I died without realizing it. So we'll grab that, and then we'll hit it. Boom. All right, let's see if we can get that screen shake to work. Stage. And we pull the game object manager inside there because the stage is what is actually going to be shook in this tweening script to kind of emulate that screen shake effect. Well, we're not getting the errors, but it's not working. So I did have this working in a different scene. Stage game object manager, yeah, that seems fun. Seems like it's what we want. Spam for GTA. What is GTA? Is it like one of those key resellers or something? I didn't realize they had bots that came into Twitch channels, although I can't say that I'm extremely surprised. Alright, so scenes, main. So we got the stage. And then I think So on a screen shake, is that on the player controller when he takes pain? On carry throw, on moral damage taken, affects screen shake. Okay, so that is happening. So theoretically, this is it. Oh, this thing's at like a weird axis. There we go. And the game object manager should be at also 0, 0. Salmon Moose says, popular enough to attract bots. It's got to be a benchmark of some sort. I completely agree. It's kind of like when you get hateful comments on, videos or whatever, or really anything that you do. When you attract the trolls and the bots, you know you've won. All right, let's explode that and then stand in it. There we go. It's kind of hard to see, but the world objects are shaking, but the level isn't shaking because there's one more step we need to do in order to get that part working, which is that we need to move our sprite tile layers. So these guys right here that make up the actual sprites that show the background. We need to add those to the stage. And so I think I had a different class here that was doing that. I think I just made attach sprite tile layers. So what it does is it sets the parent transform. Right. So the transform of this thing itself. Where's the parent? I could just shake the camera, and I was doing that before, but the problem with that is that I have to take into account that it's trying to lock onto the player every frame as well. So basically the camera tries to lead the player and lerp towards the player. So it kind of has this like catch-up effect. So you can see, I should probably turn the lights back on, but you can kind of see here how when the player stops moving, first of all there's like the lead, and then when the player stops moving, the camera kind of catches up over a little bit of time. I guess what I could do is I could have like an offset that would always get applied to the camera, and then I could just tween that between some values. I was kind of playing around with the idea of just shaking the world instead of the camera, and so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. It's not too difficult to do that. I may end up doing it one way or the other at the end of the day, or going back to shaking the camera rather. So I'm just going to paste this function from over here. Where are we going to put it? Let's put it here in load map, or under load map. And let's see. Stage. Yeah. So once we set the camera bounds, and we've set the map tile set and all other junk, we can attach the sprite tile layers to that, and then actually I guess what we're going to need to do here is just going to rename this to stage actually, and then we'll put the game object manager underneath that and get rid of this. There we go, because we want the sprite tile layers to get created under there as well. So now we've got the game object manager, which has got all the sprites, and then we've also got the sprite tile layers in here as well. And we kind of had to do it like a weird way. I kind of wish that sprite tile gave you a way to tell it which layers you want the sprite layers to be or like a parent object for the sprite layers. If we blow that thing up, you now can see that the whole thing shakes as soon as I take damage again. Oh, you know what I think is the issue there? Sort of. Is that we probably want to say like public void on collision stay 2D. I think this just has the same parameters. I want to say apply damage. Collision game object. Yeah, so Salmon Moose says, could you make a parent object for objects and tiles and shake that? And that's basically what I did. So the stage is that object, and so the game object manager is where all the game objects live. So like after you run it, you can see the game object manager has got all of these spawned objects inside of it. And then I moved the sprite tile layers in there as well. And so this object now contains all of the environment and sprites. The only exception actually is the player is not contained in that, because that method still doesn't account for the fact that like if the player started shaking, the camera would start following him too. But we'll see. The screen shake is something I can always come back to later. There we go. So now what I did there basically with the hazard was I just made it so if you're standing in it, so like on trigger stay 2D, because basically they have various methods, and I was using enter. Enter is when they start colliding, and then stay is while they are continually colliding. And really, if you're sitting inside something that's hazardous, we want it to just do damage to you all the time. So that's what we're going to do. You can also see that effect if I should get hit by these fireballs coming down this hallway. Bam. Bam. Nice. We can go back in here, and I think it's about time to do that. Make it so that the explosion doesn't just stick around forever. Let's wait for that text to go away. Could also do a screen shake when the thing explodes. Maybe we already are. Explosive. Explode. Spawns the explosion and it destroys the game object. So it's not, but I think it's shake screen is what we call that function. And if I remember correctly, it takes a duration. Although I probably want to have it have a parameterized, what is it called, screen shake. Of course, I would pick the wrong order for those words, because that's just how programming works. So when I shoot that thing, bam, yep, screen shakes when the explosion goes off. So that's kind of cool. And we can also go back. Let's enable our player lights again and put back the candles so that we can kind of see the whole scene composed. It's kind of nice. So we got this box. Oh, we can still move this box. Boom. Oh. What is this? Huh. Oh, one of our... I wonder if that's because of the screen shaking. That's another problem. One of our enemies, the knives that roam around the levels, it tried to look for a tile that did not exist. So that means it was probably close to a wall that was near the bounds of the map, and it couldn't figure out if there was something blocking its path because it didn't exist. Does the box stop fireballs? It probably does. Let's find out. I bet there's a fireball coming from right here, right? No? Of course not. Over here? Alright, well, we can move it. I think one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to explode the box, or it's going to just, the fireball is just going to disappear and nothing was going to happen. So let's see. Let's see which one it's going to be. Yes. I think the problem there is that the box has like a threshold, I think. Oh, we got a cat incoming. The cat thinks that it is dinner time. It is not stream time. Oh, or he's just going to sit. Never mind. So the explosive has a collision sensitivity, and we measure the magnitude of the relative velocity of the collision. This is actually a pretty cool feature of the collision stuff that is really handy, is the relative velocity. And so we can say debug.log that and see what. We can also debug log the, whoops, debug.log collision sensitivity, and then maybe we can see what the different velocities are. It looks like it's going to be below the velocity threshold right now, but we might want to, let's see. Oh, there we go. Well, if I'm pushing it and the fireball hits it from the other direction, then it blows up. Then the relative velocity is high enough. But if it's just standing still, it doesn't. And let's just see what that happens to be. So it looks like 8 and 6. And what happens if I push it? If I'm just pushing it, it's 5. So what we could do for this box is we could set it to just outside the player's movement range. Although I don't think that I don't think I'm going to allow the box to get moved forever. We'll see. Here it is. So if we set the collision sensitivity to 6, then I think it'll work. Let's see, so let's find, let's see if there's any fireballs incoming. Feels like there should be one in this room. Nope, there's knives. Oh, there's a fireball up there. Let's push it up there and see what happens. There it goes. Yeah. That's kind of fun. Anyways, that is pretty cool. I like how that is working out. The sensitivity thresholds is probably just an ongoing thing to make sure that everything is, traveling the right velocities. Once things kind of get more hammered down in that department, it'll be easier to tweak that stuff. That was pretty cool, though. I feel like we've made explosions on the stream before, but I just couldn't resist working with those new explosion graphics because they look pretty cool. Another thing that I wanted to work on maybe real quick is the chest, or one of the chests. Let's see what we've got here. Yes, Salmon Moose says you can make puzzles with exploding, non-exploding boxes and fireballs. Absolutely. That sounds fun. I do like that. I like the chain reaction stuff too. Maybe, you know, a fireball that hits an explosive that then hits another explosive that something, you know. You know. Let's see. So I think this is in props. We used to just have this big chest graphic, but now we have these frames. I think that exploding boxes should explode boxes that are next to them. I think. Although, don't quote me on that, because I don't. I don't remember. Anyway, so we set this to 64 pixels per unit because that's what we're using for our tile size, and so that's what makes all the art that Matt does line up correctly. This is going to be multiple sprites, actually, so we're going to apply that, and we're going to go in here and we're going to slice those bad boys up. And I think what we're going to do for this one is just use 2 frames. Oops. Going to set this to about 2.5 because we kind of want these things that are boxes to sit. You know, we don't want their centers to sit exactly in the middle of a tile. And so I think this one actually needs to be a little bit lower. Maybe more like 2.15. Sometimes getting the anchor points on these sprites correct when they're just automatically sliced is kind of a pain. Although what I'm trying to avoid is having a lot of excess transparent pixels. Although I'm not completely sure if that's actually a problem in Unity. I know that in HTML5 it was an issue because even if you have transparent pixels, if you're drawing a sprite that's like 120 by 120, even if it has some transparency to it, it's still a little bit of a cost, I think, to iterate over those pixels. But we'll see. Excuse me. All right, let's make a box. I think we already have a box. Maybe we can start with that. So prefabs, I think it's in objects. Curse chest, yes, there we go. Let's go back into our scene right here. Let's get rid of this explosion for now, since we're kind of done with that for the moment. You can actually disable this coin. Actually, I can just get rid of the coin. And so we just don't have anything here right now. Yep. And then we will see what we're working with our curse chest. So this thing's got a particle emitter when it opens. It's a chest of curses, which may not seem significant now, but it is important later. Salmon Moose says it's likely to be a problem if you have a non-power of 2 size. Even then, it's a very OpenGL 1.0 type of issue. Interesting. Well, we have been making all of our sprite sheets power of 2. Like the sprite sheets themselves, but the actual sprites are not powers of 2. So I don't know if that makes a difference. And I'm not 100% sure what you mean by OpenGL 1.0 type of issue. Does that mean that it's no longer an issue, perhaps? Or something? But let's use these sprites we had. Okay, so big chest 2, 0. Yeah, I think we want to use this one. Yes. Salmon Moose says we're just rendering a texture after all. Well, if it's not an issue, then it's much easier for Matt and probably myself if we just make some of these sprites kind of like we're doing with Raga. One of the reasons that we created Raga's sprite sheet the way that we did was that it's much easier for Matt to, for example, I guess if we open up a sprite sheet, it's much easier for him to anchor the sprites in the position they need to be in rather than having me fiddle with the anchor point in the sprite to try and get it to act correctly. Huh. Salmon Moose says, I think they've gotten past such primitive issues. Sprite size doesn't matter because you're just shifting UVs. That does make a lot of sense. I think that my hesitation on this particular issue kind of comes out of HTML5, where, and in specifically Canvas, I mean, we're not talking about WebGL here. In WebGL, it might be a moot point. But in the world of HTML5 Canvas, you're basically doing a bitblit, right, where you're copying a rectangle of pixels from one canvas to another. And I think that's where the actual sprite size issues come into play. But it's good to know that Unity may not have those issues. So let's see. So we got our chest here. So that's our starting sprite. And then we want to set the open sprite to this guy. Maybe this will just work with our brand new things. Let's see. There it goes. Hey, we got ghosts coming out. Whee! Let's see. I do like the tweening on that guy. But yeah, that works out pretty well. This is I designed this tweening around an old chess graphic that Matt had created, and it's nice to see it just kind of work. Although the collider is not correct. So let's see, we can actually just reset that collider and then edit it a little bit so that it's a little more where we want it to be. So like kind of bring it in like that. Bring that up a little bit. Then we want the player to get around it and it's solid. We can make it static just for this guy. It's not a rigid body. That's a little better. Well, I can kind of hide behind it now. Although I guess that kind of makes sense. Could also change the collider size. I don't like having situations where the player can completely lose themselves behind something else in the game world, just because I don't think it looks that good. But that's a problem for another day. And I think maybe the last thing we'll do on this guy is give it some nifty light, because we can. Well, one, we'll give it a nifty light. Well, actually, let's first make it a light obstacle. So we'll say light obstacle, and by default, the light obstacles I don't think I talked about too much, but you can kind of see that by default, the way the sprite or light obstacle works is it kind of makes it completely black, which in some cases is maybe what we want, but in this case not, because we want you to feel like you can see part of the chest. Because in this scenario it's kind of like the light is coming from the bottom here. Although I kind of wonder if the light, I don't think it matters that much, but there is this, yeah, no, it doesn't matter at all. There is this Z property on the light sources, and I thought maybe that would let you kind of like shift the light upwards so the light would kind of go down onto the object, but I don't think that's true. You can do this though. You can set the light origin and do some weird shadowing effects at extreme numbers. You can kind of see how, by taking this stuff to the extreme, you can kind of see how the shadowing works. is it basically just takes copies of the sprite and uses that as a shadow and renders that. So pretty cool to know how that kind of works. So we have the light obstacle, and the way that we would make this less opaque is by, again, changing the alpha channel here. So we can change this down to, like, say 75. 75 is the number I've just played with a little bit. And so you can see how now, like, when I'm close, it kind of has like a shadow behind it. But if I get farther away, it doesn't. And you can still kind of see the chest pretty well, so it's kind of nice. But it also kind of gives you that nice effect where, you know, you've kind of got that shadowing in the background. The other thing we could do too is we could also put a light source on this guy that would then show up once it's opened. And so maybe we will do that too. So light 2D, light source, and actually we want it to be underneath this guy. I want to, and let's make this guy purple. So by default, it'll just look like that. It's very small. You know, obviously we want to go in here and make that a little bigger. And we probably want to move that up more like in the middle of the opening, because we just do that at 0.5. And default light is fine, but maybe we want to change this to be more like 3 or 2.5. You know, kind of more of a rectangular shape, or maybe just 2 and 4. Can you make it so that the shadow, so Seaberry Monk says, can you make it so that the shadow starts more at the far edges? The far edges of the chest itself? I don't know there's a whole lot of control over that. Basically, there's just this, I mean, there's some other properties I don't understand quite yet, like this material. You may be able to do stuff like that, but the higher you set this alpha channel, the darker the overall sprite is going to be. You know, I think that the way that works is that it's like, it's almost like a height map. So that, like, if it's fully opaque, then it's kind of as if the object was too tall to get light on top. So I don't know if that's kind of what you were talking about, but the way that I've been able to adjust that stuff so far, you know, to kind of make things appear like they're closer to the ground and thus not, you know, completely blocking light, just kind of casting shadows, is by lowering that. Also, we have this other light that we put on here too, which kind of confuses things. So the chest isn't on the shadow. I don't know. I mean, maybe we could adjust the positioning of this guy, of the, like we could do this. So we could adjust the position of the obstacle, but I don't know what that would do to some of the other things. Like, so it won't always work. Like, for example, let's go back to making this pretty opaque. And then, like, we can, yeah, so you can kind of offset the shadow, but it's not gonna exactly work the way we want it to, you know, because now all it does is just kind of offset where the shadow is being cast from, and then, you know, depending on our location to the chest, it makes it look wrong. That's a good question, though. I don't completely know, but you know, you can kind of see that the way we can control that through here is just with that alpha channel, and that kind of essentially softens the shadow. But you're right, it kind of still starts from these edges of the side of the chest. Gives us a pretty reasonable idea of what we want, though. Alright. Can you put the shadow source in the background of the chest? That is a good question. Let's try that. So maybe... So this has a sorting order. I don't know that I can because it doesn't exactly work like... it's like a separate camera that renders that stuff. And so it's kind of like a secondary pass. So changing the order in the layer actually doesn't really do anything. And there's not... doesn't seem to be a way to actually change the sorting layer for this particular sprite. Seaberry Monk says, I have no idea how this would be done, but could you have like the far edges of the chest be the light blocker, but the source of the light blocker would have to change based on where Raga is? Yeah, that sounds complicated. I mean, it sounds like it's probably possible, but it's certainly more complicated than this simplistic solution, which is just to, just to have it be one thing. I guess we could create several different light blockers. What if we put a second chest on top? Again, I think that the problem isn't that... Like, the layering issue is hard because the way that this lighting system works is that it has a second camera, and that camera renders light sources, I think, in a secondary step. Kind of thing. But those are all really good questions. I don't know. I am not an expert on Light 2D at this point, so I would like to know the answers to those questions, though. But maybe the Unity forums would be a good place to look for that, because it would look a little nicer, probably. Anyways, let's see if we can like finish up this lighting real quick for this guy. So it's interesting when you have a light source and a light obstacle in the same setup, because it's kind of blocking its own light to an extent. Although I wonder if we increase the sorting order of that light, if that changes anything. Nope. That really doesn't seem to do anything. There's also these different light materials that you can use, and I'm not 100% sure how they all work yet. Oh, so this one ignores obstacles. So I can actually create the light from the chest and have it ignore the obstacles of itself, which is kind of nice because then it kind of keeps that thing looking correct. But it also has the problem of like you can see it, it still casts these other shadows. And then there's these different kinds of light points, but I'm not exactly sure what they do. So for now, I've just been kind of using the default. But anyways, what we can do here is go back into our chest, and let's see. That actually will be the chest pawn. First chest pawn, yeah. Oh, container pawn. That's what I want. Container pawn. And we'll just say public game object light, and then on container open we will say light.setActive is true. And then back in here, we will disable that by default. Disable it by default. And then in here, we'll just drag that guy down to the light. And then theoretically, when we open it, the light should come on. Which it does. And it looks okay. I think that this box definitely needs some interior to make that look a little better. Instead of just looking like a big white mass. We can play with that real quick. So I want to have the light kind of come from like right there. Just about, so 0.7. And so let's change that. Oops. 0.7, and then we can turn the particles back on. And there we go. We have a chest that has ghosts coming out of it. Fun stuff. Interesting discussion about Light 2D. That's kind of always the trade-off when you're using these kinds of components, these kinds of packages, is that they may not always do things exactly the way you would want. There are a couple different options. I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, and I'll mention it again, is that there is another package called 2DDL, which is 2D Dynamic Lighting, which does similar stuff, but it works on colliders instead of sprites. And so, you know, depending on your purposes, that might actually work better for you, to royal you. But it does kind of a similar thing, where you can have, you know, basically 2D sprites with this kind of lighting. I tried this package out. This one was only 15 bucks. I went ahead and I bought both just to kind of play around with them and see which ones I like better. And for my purposes, the Light 2D one actually just kind of ended up being a little bit better. But that's not to say it does everything exactly the way we would want. So it'll probably be an ongoing process of fiddling with it. Anyways, I'll hang around for another couple minutes, but I think I am done with streaming today. So if anybody has any questions, you can throw it into the Twitch chat. And I will always take time to plug A Wizard's Lizard 2, which is the game that we are working on right now. We are coming to Kickstarter with this game on September 1st. So that is next month. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to sign up for our mailing list and get updates about A Wizard's Lizard 2, you can do that. The URL is www.wizardslizard.com/2. And I can also just toss that in the chat. wizardslizard.com/2. And you can also join us on our various social presences. We have Twitter at Lost Decade Games, and you can join us on our forum, forum.lostdecadegames.com. And you can also check out our podcast. Although a lot of that stuff was probably being spammed by Moobot, which is the Twitch bot that we use. So, Seaberry Monk, thank you for attending. So it was really fun to watch your stream. I appreciate that. I hope you guys had a really good time. And as always, I will export these videos to YouTube later this week. And I will be here streaming again. More A Wizard's Lizard 2 development next Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So I hope to see you guys there. And thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for your suggestions, and thanks for the great questions about all the stuff that we're using. So I will catch you next time. Ship it.